Series. This afternoon, we're taking a look at the Lorain Avenue house fire that occurred early morning hours, right as shift change, actually, on December 22nd in Company 16's area. There have been a couple Lorain Avenue fires. This is the last one to occur, especially because a couple May days occurred there. So we've allocated a little bit more time to this one. Not sure where this all takes us. A lot of good discussion. Got a bunch of company officers here. Remember that our purpose of our Boss Talk episodes really is to hear from the company officers, the unit officers. We want to hear their stories. What did they do? What were they thinking? What did they know? And, of course, from command, because command is important. They arrive later on, right, almost always into the incident. What were your thoughts? What did you do? How did things work out? So we have a fair amount of people watching this outside of our normal audience. We have a couple of larger groups that are watching this, so they'll be able to chime in. Remember, if we have any certified chief officers that want command COPDI credit, then make sure that you sign in now with your ID and your name. And then, of course, at the end, do the same thing. A couple things. So we got sloppy with face coverings, right? So today you're going to find everybody talking in face coverings. One of the challenges is producing that with getting volume through the mic and all that. So bear with us. Our production crew is working through that. And, of course, that's first for us as well. So that you're going to see throughout the event today. A lot going on, right? We talked about this incident. This is a lot going on. We've had a couple other Boss Talk episodes. Right, so this one was, you think of the complications that just start off with a fire is shift change early in the morning. That can be tricky. Who's on the apparatus? You could have mixed crews. You could have stuff not passed on. You could have all of those things. I often tie back to the Sergeant Carter death in Washington, D.C., right? That was a shift change event. A lot of just stuff going on there. And, of course, those are always troublesome, whether at your own firehouse or as a command officer. You had a significant fire upon arrival. You had, into the event, you had some May days that occurred. Everything turned out okay, right? Nobody ended up being at the hospital, admitted off duty for any lost time injuries, none of that. So at the end of the day, everything worked out okay. But this was a pretty serious event. We did not want to delay talking about this in order to write the report. There is a formal written after action per policy, but we didn't want to delay any of that. So you're going to see and hear from folks who were on the scene that morning, and you're going to hear from the incident commander. And we think that's important to get that out there now so that everybody knows, hey, here's what happened on Lorain Avenue just before 6 a.m. on December 22nd. So that's my part. Remember we may or may not take a break. If we do, you'll get a heads up on that, and we're going to roll. So I'm going to turn it over to Captain Brady Miller, who's going to be our moderator for today. Remember, if you have any questions throughout and you're signed in, you can type them in, and then those questions will be asked at the time period when we can talk about that in class. So that's it. Enjoy the episode. I know these folks are going to do a good job at telling their story, Lorain Avenue, December 22nd, early in the morning.
All right, again, thank you, Chief Davis. I am Captain Miller, Company 2. I'm going to briefly introduce everybody, and then we're just going to get into what we do. Here on my left is Battalion Chief Fitch, Battalion 1 on the B shift. At the end of the table, we have Lieutenant Harris, a Battalion 1 B shift float. Behind him, Lieutenant Riley, Battalion 1 A shift float. To my left here, we have Captain Arnold, 19B. Firefighter Scott Pierce, 16B. Just to note and to kind of intro everybody, Scott does sit on the current lieutenant's list, hopefully to be promoted quite soon. To his right is Lieutenant Owens, 16B, and at the other end of the table is Lieutenant Machala, Battalion 1, Float B. So we're going to start this the same way we do, or we have the other boss talks, and we are going to just listen to the dispatch and then go ahead and look at a map.
South Brown 7 Charlie, 9604 Lorain Avenue, Cross Street, Burnett Avenue, house fire, box area 16-4. Unit South Brown 7 Charlie, 9604 Lorain Avenue, Cross Street, Burnett Avenue, house fire. Engine company 16, 19, 54, 12, 2, truck 716, tower 719, rescue squad 742, ambulance 716, battalion 701, battalion 704, operate on 7 Charlie, box area 16-4.
So just to kind of reiterate what Chief Davis said, this is 6 o'clock in the morning. 6:09, I think, was the dispatch time. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order, honestly, on who we talk to. And I'm going to leave the first due engine for the last. So they will tell their story last. So I'm going to start with the second engine, Captain. Tell me what you were thinking with the dispatch. Going down the road, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about? Are you communicating with your driver? What you're communicating with your driver, and what you're communicating with the guys, if at all, in the back of the engine.
All right, so we're dispatched as a second due engine company. We're going down the road. I'm checking my MDC for updates. I see that it's a possible house under renovation that's on fire. 16's engine calls out the water supply. I acknowledge and confirm his route of travel to make sure that I can access that appropriately. Got there at the same time 16's engine did. Coming through the neighborhood, obviously you could tell it was a fire. There was smoke through the neighborhood, you could smell it. I instructed my crew as we arrived. 16's engine officer had given the on-scene report. My crew, I told them to go up to 16's engine and stretch a backup line, a crosslay from their piece, and to meet up with 16's crew at the front door. At that time, met up with Fireman Pierce, who was the officer on 16's engine, and Lieutenant Owens. Obviously, it was a working fire, had fire visible in the Alpha Bravo quadrant of the home. We masked up, started going in through the front door, realized that there was a hole a couple feet within the front door. Relayed that to command, advised command at that time.
We'll get into that. And let's just talk about en route and until you get there.
And that's basically it.
So nothing out of the ordinary
Nothing
from the
out of the
second
ordinary.
due wagon?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing out of the
So,
ordinary.
and our third due engine company isn't here today, so we're going to move to our fourth due engine. Lieutenant, same question I posed to you. Anything out of the ordinary? What were you thinking about? What are you thinking anything different running with 54?
Not really. I mean, being dispatched Lorain Avenue, I'm familiar with the fact that it crosses over 29. I wasn't 100% sure. I know that's the, higher numbers.
So it's split. Two completely separate streets.
Yep. Yeah.
You need two different ways to get into the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, I knew our general running route from Station 12. So I was the officer on Engine 712. So coming from here, we were coming southbound on 29. So just finding out where exactly on Lorain Avenue it was, communicating that with the driver. Waiting for the first due to give, I found 1 or 2 hydrants basically I knew that they were going to utilize to initiate the primary water supply. So waiting to hear that. Once I heard their hydrant, I knew the one that, 54 was going to lay out from, or that was going to be the secondary hydrant, just coming from the other side of the block. It didn't look like there was anything to the rear that we could have come through a yard or anything like that. There was a little alleyway, but there was no good water, so I figured they would be coming from that way. We got down the road pretty quick as we were all out in the engine bay. When the call went out, basically on the engine, essentially saw it pop up, and we were out quick. So I knew there was a good chance that we would arrive ahead of them.
Ahead of 54.
Yeah, just again based on time of day, how quick we were out, no traffic, anything like that. So do you want to keep going into arrival a little bit?
So I do have a question about arriving out of order.
Yeah.
And I guess specifically running with, and this could apply to anybody that's running with out-of-county units, federal units, whatever.
Sure.
Do you, in your mind, do you build out a way to communicate that to other units or to discuss that with, if we're running with 34,
Right.
for example,
Yeah.
834 from Company 12,
Right.
how do we, is that something you practice in your mind?
I mean, I like to communicate it. I don't like jumping the running order personally. I know it leads to problems. I don't like doing it. I don't like being part of it. I don't like initiating it either way. It just generally leads to problems. So I asked where they were. That's how I initiated it. I asked their location.
On this fire specifically,
Yes.
you asked 54's
Yep.
location.
Yeah, as we were coming into the block, basically, as soon as we crossed over the Beltway, we were about to come into the neighborhood. I asked where they were. I didn't get a response. At that point, there was a lot of other radio traffic too, so they might just not have time to get in. Pulled up to the hydrant, saw where the cars were parked, saw where the incident was in relation to the hydrant. We couldn't just stop and wait at the hydrant. We would have blocked the rest of the street up. So we made the decision to, hey, we're gonna pull up if we needed to. I was gonna go direct with the chief face to face, which I did. I made the decision basically that, hey, if we're gonna remain fourth due, that's fine. 54 could just come up to our wagon where we're parked, pull the line off our piece. Our wagon will be in the position of the third due. We'll do the job of the fourth
So
due.
units would seamlessly
Yeah.
switch spots.
Yep.
Crew duties stay the
Yeah,
same.
the driver was going to hand jack back because it was 150 feet from
Okay.
where we ended up parking.
Okay. Communicating with the guys in the back, anything out of the ordinary?
I knew it was my 3 and 4 for the day from B shift that I've worked for, so I knew the crew. I knew it was my normal driver, normal third and
Did
fourth.
you take only four
Yeah,
firemen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, 4 on the wagon.
So, and then, so on the dispatch was, engine 702 was dispatched as the fifth due engine. That got moved around, is that correct, Chief Fitch?
Yes.
Okay, and so we'll go back to Lieutenant Riley. In the back, you want to just hand him that mic, is fine. As the fifth due engine. So you cleared a medical local, correct?
Yeah, so we
Did
cleared.
you pull Montgomery or did you pull the chief as
So-
far as adding yourself to the run?
So originally I pulled Montgomery up and on 7 Bravo and advised them that I'm clear to the med local in the first due and I'm good for the box. I thought the box was not dispatched or filled out at that point. However, it already was. So I went to the chief, told the chief I'm clear to the med local in the first due. I'm good for the box. Knowing where it was, I knew we were going to be pretty close at either pretty second arriving or pretty close to first arriving, depending on where it was. So he gave me the okay to go on the box, so I responded on the call. We pulled in the block the same time as 19 did. So we came in basically nose to nose. We stopped, let them go in front of us. We parked out of the way. I looked at the hydrants. Looked like all the hydrants, everybody had called out the hydrants already. So I told my driver, hang on there. He was going to start getting dressed, make sure the water was good. The rest of my crew, we went up to the scene, met at the scene, side A. Told my crew to pull a line. They ended up pulling a line off a 19's engine, the 300 foot.
So the tools that you took originally as a rapid intervention was solely a hand line?
Yep, solely a hand
Okay.
line, obviously a thermal imager and a Halligan bar for right at that moment.
Okay. Lieutenant Harris, as the second due truck, or tower in this case, tell me what you're thinking, about.
Yeah, so Tower 19, as a float officer, your assignment, your timing in the morning is usually messed up or it could be messed up. As far as you don't necessarily know 100% of the time that you're going to be at that station. So getting there extremely early to set up your gear doesn't always happen because you don't know you could be moved after everything's already set up. So I really shoot for at least 6 o'clock. So I was in the process of taking off, relieving the captain from A shift, his gear as the box was going out. So I had no idea what the address was until I looked up at the computer. Which isn't that big of a deal, but it kind of set me back already. I felt I was behind the 8 ball. So I took it upon myself. I know 16's truck gets out the door very quickly. Heard it was a 16 box. So I chose to throw all my gear inside the rig and get my directions to my driver as quickly as possible. He's assigned there. He's a very good driver, so I wasn't worried after I confirmed where he was going to be going. So jumped in, gave him that, and then started getting dressed. By the time I was done and pretty much looked up, we had smoke rolling across the street, and we were first arriving.
So where did you position?
I wound up taking side A position. Truck 16 wasn't in a position to take that. And single family home, no side Charlie access. There was an alley, which wasn't going to be feasible. And so we positioned on side A.
Okay.
I never communicated across the radio as far as a first due, second due truck assignment. That was going to, in my opinion, if I can get to the position and do my responsibility without causing radio traffic or delay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I took first assigned truck position, but acted as my second due dispatched assignment.
Okay.
So.
All right. And Chief Fitch, you're next.
So I saw the call come up on the computer, got in the car. I had no MDC because I was in the process of updating it, and it was just taking forever to update. Responded down the road. Engine 701 called to ask if they could be on the call. I went ahead and put them on the call. At the time, I was driving down 495. I wish that I had told 2 to stay on the call and have 1 just respond extra. That time in the morning, I'm thinking it's probably going to be work. I didn't have an MDC, so I didn't get some of the updates on things. Arrived on the scene. When I arrived on the scene, truck 16 was pulling in front of me. As I'm coming down the hill, I try to look at some of the homes of the area that I'm running, so I have an idea of what I'm going to be seeing when I get there, especially if I can't see the house. First house I see is a Cape Cod. I turn left. I'm driving down the road. I can see the dormers in that house. I'm driving down the road. I see another Cape Cod, and when I pulled up to the structure, I could see a heavy volume of fire coming from the structure. I was good on 16's report, and when I heard 12 ask 54 where they were, I knew that meant that 12 was on the scene. So I understood without them saying anything further what that was going to mean. And then Lieutenant Machala came to my vehicle, and we told him to go below, check for fire, and work their way up.
But as you're concerned, as the event stands right now, not looking forward, but as your arrival, things are a little different, but not different to the point where they're drawing great concern. The differences are norms.
In terms of
Especially
units?
1st Battalion norms, meaning guys arriving,
Yeah.
units arriving relatively near each other, within seconds of each other, and maybe parking somewhere out of the norm. So,
Yes.
so nothing alarming at this point.
No.
From your stance.
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. So now we're going to move to the first due engine, and kind of the same question to you. So I guess really before we start, Scott, tell me, you are on the lieutenant's list, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have been riding in charge at Station 16, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't your first day doing this.
Correct.
All right, so I pose the question to you. Is this your first box alarm?
No.
Okay. So box alarm goes out, you get on the engine. Tell me, or tell the viewers, what are you thinking? What are you looking at? What tools are you using to get yourself to the event? And what are you talking about in the front of the fire truck?
So the first thing I discussed with the wagon driver, he told me what his planned route was. He had seen it pop up before I did. I told him what the cross streets were on the computer and confirmed the numbers with him so that we were on the same page as that. And then I went to the paper maps, and then I hit the map button on the CAD, and the computer was not loading. So obviously in the paper maps it doesn't show individual houses, so I knew where the hydrant was, but I couldn't tell if it was the dispatch address was going to be past or before that. So in my mind it made sense. I was very specific about I'm going to be using that hydrant, not that I'm going to be laying out or taking my own hydrant because I didn't know. And the other thing is, after that, it's, I was prompted to which direction I was coming in, to get that hydrant.
You were prompted from the driver?
No, from 19's wagon.
Okay.
So my driver and I had already, once we confirmed that he was coming from that way, and I knew that was the hydrant we're going to use.
Regular driver at 16.
Correct.
Okay.
And that, it was going to be on his right-hand side, right basically at the end of the block based on the numbers. It never even crossed my mind to confirm with 19 of that I was coming off of, coming in from that end of Lorain. It never occurred to me that I should say that. So, and then once we get there, the wagon driver's been doing this long enough that I don't need to tell him to do anything. He positioned.
And obviously you have the lieutenant in the back of the fire truck. Did you at any point think to yourself, hey, I should tell the crew maybe this is my initial game plan, or did you do that?
No. So we had the medic from the previous shift was there. We worked him with a fair amount. And then obviously, the lieutenant's been doing this a long time. And that's probably a weakness, is I did not communicate anything with them because in my mind, they're solid firemen. I don't need to micromanage them. And I did not. I mean,
you had a lot of stuff going on in front of the fire truck. We realized that. So just time might have been an issue as well.
Yeah, it never occurred to me to have to tell them, what line needs to be pulled and what their action should be. So, and they did the right thing as I was coming around the wagon, looking at, what was going on in the house. They were deploying a cross lane.
Lieutenant, riding in the back of the fire truck, did you have any input at getting to the call? Did you say anything to him over the headset, or hey, think about this, anything like that, or had those always kind of been previous discussions getting him ready to do what he was doing?
They've been previous discussions, and while it's been fun riding in the back, I think it's important to preface that we all knew it was on fire. When I parked my truck at 5 a.m., I could smell it, and it just took an hour. So going down the road, it was really just getting ready. Okay. There was no communication about, hey, we're going to pull this line or that line. If it was something out of the ordinary, we would have definitely had a discussion, hey, we're going to pull this, not just our cross.
But as far as you're concerned, first due engine, he's relatively new in the process. This is a bread and butter fire.
Yes.
As we sit right now. All right. Do you want to add anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So I think next we're going to hear our initial on-scene report and show a little video. Is that correct? Okay.
Guy 71 responding. No MDC. Battalion 701. Agent 701 to Battalion 1. I'm clear, Medbrook 1 to first field, different spot. Okay, response is this. Paramedic engine 702, you can go to service. Battalion 701. Just clarify, you got paramedic engine 701 going to assist now, correct? That's correct. Okay, 10 change flight 9604 Lorain Avenue, updated running order, paramedic engine 716, paramedic engine 719, engine 754, paramedic engine 712, and paramedic engine 701. 610. 16 to 19, we're going to use the hydrant at 9607. 19 to 60, you coming in off of Burnett? We're coming in from the top side off Branch Road. Yeah, we're off Burnett. Paramedic engine 719 so far. 754 engine 712. We're looking at 9613. Paramedic engine 712, sorry. Paramedic engine 716, all units. On scene 9604. One-story, single-family dwelling. A fire showing. Someone start me the rapid intervention dispatch. All the way.
Is that from dispatch to arrival?
12 to 54, how far out there? Battalion 701 on the scene, off command my vehicle, Alpha Delta Corner. Engine 716, give me an update. Engine 716 driver, turn off your brow light, please. Tower 719 to command. One story in the real. There's no walkout. You got solar panels on the roof side, and you got fire shower inside Bravo. All right, engine 716. You're taking a line to the Alpha side front door right now. Truck 716, they need a primary on the number 1 floor. Engine 719, back up into 716. Engine 712, taking third view. Engine 712 is going to check the basement and then see about getting above the single-story Cape Cod style house. Got fire from the, would be the knee wall area, possibly in the first floor. Paramedic Airfield 719 for the chief. You advise there's a hole in the floor just outside the front door, okay? All right, got a hole inside the front door. We get a,
We'll continue. I just want to touch on. We good? Okay, so we've talked about what we're doing or what we're thinking from dispatch to arrival. We have a initial on-scene report. What I hear and see from the audio is nothing really out of the norm. Is that, am I kind of correct there, everybody? And the game, I mean, it seems to play out as a normal box alarm would. Building construction, initial on-scene report, all of those types of things seem to be somewhat normal. Am I, you want to add anything, Chief, or am I correct?
Yes. No, not yet.
Not yet being
Not yet to add.
Okay. I could paint the picture in my mind of where people were and what everybody was doing. And then the report came from 19's engine about the hole in the floor, correct? Did you see that from the front or from the back? From the front?
From the front.
Okay. So if we can continue, I just wanted to see if I was missing anything. You want to continue the video, our audio and video a little, we can. Thank you. If you need a minute, I can do other things. Yeah, just keep going. Okay. We'll get back to the video and audio. We'll get back to the video and audio in just a minute. So let's go back to the first new engine and giving your on-scene report. Did you do that from the front of the fire truck? Were you out of the fire truck? How do you do that?
Out of the fire truck.
So you arrive, get out of the fire truck, get your cylinder on, give your on-scene report.
Correct.
Okay. Take a hand line to the Alpha side.
Correct.
What hand line did you choose?
Just 200-foot cross lay, 1.5 inches.
So 1.5 inches attack line. Any challenges or problems putting that in service?
No.
Any challenges or problems getting into the structure?
No.
Who did that for you? Okay, so your crew brought some tools and got inside.
Yes.
Tell me or tell us what you did once all of that happened.
So standing in the front yard, the lieutenant and I discussed that it may be a basement fire because there was smoke coming out of the chimney. So then, you know, they were stretching a line to the front door. I needed to finish going around and see what was going on around back. There was a little bit of fire showing from side Bravo out of the gable vent. Nothing significant. Nothing going on side Charlie. Then coming back, I had met up with him on side Bravo.
Were you able to do a full 360?
No, there was a fence on side Delta that I didn't see the gate at first, so I didn't even attempt to get through it. So then I met up with the lieutenant on side Bravo, and we had broken the basement window on side Bravo, and there was something going on down there, but it wasn't fire. So we didn't believe that it was a full-on basement fire, but something was going on in that area. So
and not enough to change your tactics.
Correct, and it didn't, in my opinion, and we actually discussed it, it didn't warrant us to say over the radio that we're working, you know, on a basement fire. And then when we had gotten in the front door, 19 was pulling up about that time. So we were discussing, again, whether it was actually in the basement, and then 19 came up, and we discussed the hole in the floor and how significant it was, and that there was no room to operate there on-site alpha in this little vestibule.
So we open the door to the house. You can see the hole in the floor.
Correct.
Can you see visible fire?
Now, so when we first got in there, there was a wall just that basically separated the Bravo side bedroom. That wall was still intact. I could see that the floor had burned out from essentially right in front of the doorway, almost all the way over to that Delta side wall. And it was probably I would say an 18-inch gap when we first initially saw it.
So you discovered pretty early in the event that you couldn't go through the front door.
Correct. And one thing that I failed to communicate, and I had thought about it, is that with getting in there and seeing that this hole is already here and had stretched so far that this had been burning for a long time, and I never said anything. And because in my mind, it just didn't, I didn't connect that I should relay that.
So did the two of you, or did you come up with a game plan to overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, so
And what was that game plan?
So this is where there's been a lot of back and forth discussion of, what I did or did not do and what I would change. But we initially were just operating from that little vestibule area. There was no room for anyone else to be in there, certainly not a truck company. So the lieutenant was hooking, and the medic was, obviously putting out fire as we were getting to it, or hitting fire, I should say. So we discussed pulling that door off because it was a solid core door, and the gap.
The front door.
The front door, yes. The front door was a solid door. So I had to go back to the engine company and get a Halligan bar, come back, take the door off, and then we laid it across the hole that had burned in the floor.
And at that time, it was still just engine 716 operating, or was 19 there?
No, 19 was already there, and that we had already discussed. They had already gone around the backside of the house to enter in, and that was another thing.
So who kind of made that decision to send 19 into a different place?
That was me.
Okay, and you communicated that obviously with the captain. Hey, we're having problems here. You guys go around and try the back door or whatever.
Correct. Because I had seen the slider. I told them where the slider was, and this was poor communication on my part, because the slider was actually facing the Bravo side of the house, but it was actually on side Charlie. So it caused some confusion because I didn't communicate appropriately of actually what the physical location. It was just the way it was facing. So
your game plan at this point was to hold the fire the best that you could and have 19 go around the back side of the house and come into the house and kind of take a position from an interior.
Correct.
Correct. Did that pose any challenges to you?
Initially, no. Like I said, the communication in that little foyer, that little vestibule area, talking with 16's engine, obviously, I tried to get the lineman to come up, at least make the turn to hit the visible fire, but there was a couple little hiccups there. At that point, we knew we weren't making any progress, so we had to redeploy to side Charlie. Back to the hole, I'm not going to lie. I did contemplate trying to go over that hole, for about 10 to 15 seconds, and I just had a gut feeling where it wasn't a good thing, and obviously the gut feeling worked out to my benefit, because I probably would have fallen through that hole. So again, redeploying to side Charlie, one of the issues I came into is I had to extend my line. So given the topography and everything like that.
What hand line did you pull?
I pulled another 200-foot inch and a half hand line off.
From N16's engine?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So once we made access through the slider on side Charlie and advancing towards the Bravo side of the house, our line, we came up short. So I had to send my lineman back out to 16's rig to grab a rack so we could extend the line.
Any issues extending the line?
None whatsoever.
How much fire was there in the house when you got there?
The bulk of the fire basically was in the Alpha Bravo quadrant, probably right at the Echo quadrant.
On that floor you were on, or above you?
It was above us.
Okay.
At that point.
Okay. Visibility?
It was decent, again, because the fire was venting, so, obviously that was providing some of the illumination, but
okay.
No issue.
So back to the first engine. Let's go back to, so we take the decision to take the door off the frame, cover the hole. Was that decision successful?
Yeah, it worked out. And this was pretty deep into the incident. And from my perspective, I should have done it sooner. but it was successful. I mean, we operated on and across that door the entire incident with no issue.
So now to the chief. Chief, while this was happening, and we talk about a hole in the floor, and we will get into the building construction component in a couple of minutes. Did you feel there was a delay at getting to the seat of the fire, or were you aware of what was going on? Did you see changes in the conditions, things like that?
So there was definitely a delay on getting water applied to the burning surfaces. I could see that from the vehicle. With the hole in the floor, there was a couple things that occurred here, and several of them were me assuming things, which would cause several problems, because I've been to a fire on that street. I've been to an attic fire on that street. I've been in those homes. And a lot of the fires down here are generally, with the hole in the floor, it's going to be between basically 3 joists. And I'm assuming that that's what it is. We can work around it. We can work over it. We can go down a wall and then get around it. And I never should have assumed those things. I should have asked for more detail on that hole, so I had a better understanding of what those guys were working around. So the hole obviously was an issue, and my assumptions were a problem. And then conditions not changing, I was aware of, but at the same time, I knew that those guys were working to get their line in place. I had a lot of trust in very aggressive, strong officers with experience, and I was, again, assuming that I would see some change rather quickly once some ceilings got pulled. I was comfortable that the fire was venting, and I could see guys operating on the first floor through the windows. So I knew that they weren't dealing with a lot of heat or visibility problems, and it was just really above them. Some water up there would get a knock on it.
So honestly, from your stance at this point, this is a house that's on fire that might have some obstacles, but not obstacles that we can't overcome.
Yes. Now, I will say that if I was operating generally in other areas with people I didn't operate with, I wouldn't have had the same assumptions.
Okay.
So, yeah, the guys that I had there that day, I absolutely believe that there would be no problem overcoming those obstacles in a short period.
Okay. And your belief at this point is this is what type of house? A singles? Just what you think right now, where we're at in the call.
Well, right now I know exactly what it is.
That evening, that morning, at 6:15 in the morning, you were under the impression this is a what?
So again, when I pulled up, I saw it. When I came and they made my left to go onto a Lorain, I could see a Cape Cod. I'm driving down the road, and the next time I look at a house, I see a Cape Cod. I pulled up to this house. It's a pretty good distance up a hill. I couldn't really see. I could just see fire. The fire location appeared to be in like a knee wall area. Obviously, it was wrong, and I mean, even the whole report of a 1-story and then fire coming from a knee wall area doesn't make sense.
But not inaccurate, correct?
Well, yeah, it's inaccurate because really, if it was a Cape Cod, some people call it a 1.5 or a 2. I always call them 2 because if you go up a flight of stairs, it's 2 stories. But again, here's another time where making some assumptions caused a problem, and that was a poor report of the building construction. I got a better view, and I saw that area in the Charlie and Delta quadrants was definitely single story. It never repeated that. There was never time to really say that. I still believed in the Alpha Bravo quadrant there was a 2nd story possible area, and the problem there is, I'm going with my experience of homes that I lived in and lived around that had those attics that were livable spaces, and in fact, across the street from that is a house that's been renovated, and they have an attic area that's a livable space. But again, we're going on several assumptions, which is not the way we should be operating.
Okay, but your belief right now is 1 story, may or may not have livable space, got a basement. Charlie reports are there, and crews are working as we normally would. We've encountered a little bit of a problem, and they're working on overcoming it.
Yep, and my concern is getting a report on what I have below them and making sure that I can see some guys operating in the windows, and I want to know what they have below them, because a lot of fire above them doesn't scare me. A lot of fire below them makes me very, very nervous.
Certainly.
So that's what I'm concerned and trying to find out.
So I'm going to kind of take it to the back side of the box, if I would, with engine 712. and 54, and we get that you kind of switched positions with them, but you took your tack line to the Charlie side, correct?
Yeah, so we arrived, and again, I knew I hadn't seen them. I quickly communicated to the lineman in the back as we were getting out. Either way, I wanted the line to the rear. So I told him, hey, run the 300-inch-and-a-half to the rear. That's when I went up to the buggy. So him and the fourth went to the back, started to stretch the line. Talked to the chief real quick, face to face. He said, hey, we're here. Not sure how far out 54 is. He said, hey, just take third. He's like, give me a basement check, and then take your line above, or take your line.
Were you in
go
service
up.
before 19 got around there? Were they repositioned to the Charlie
I'm not
side?
sure where they were. They were in the door before we were in the rear. They were probably getting the lines flaked out around the same time. So my concern was finding exterior basement access at first. That's
Did
what
that
I was.
exist?
No.
So how did you overcome that?
Well, that's what I was looking for. So I did 2 laps around the house looking for that. Again, made an assumption that, hey, this house probably has, whether it's a walk down or
Because of the topography?
Because of the topography, I didn't think it had like a walkout or anything like that, but I thought there was probably a cellar stairs, bilgo door, or something, that would be there. So I started from the Alpha side, went around clockwise basically, so I hit Bravo first. I saw the casement window that they had taken out in the Alpha Bravo corner that went into the basement. I didn't know who had taken it out, but the window was already taken out, so I shined my light in there. I could see there was good smoke, basically made the same kind of assumption that Scott did, that there's something going on down here. I mean, there was no smoke pumping out the window, but there was smoke enough in there where I really couldn't see too far into the basement. And I saw a bunch of burned material, which later on found out that it was part of the stuff that had dropped down after the floor had collapsed. So I knew there was something going on. Went around to the back. The guys were getting the line flaked out. I went all the way around again, checked behind a couple bushes, just thinking there's got to be a door here somewhere. It wasn't. So I came around the second time. And that's when 19 was going in through the door. I still had to get dressed. My lineman and fourth were pretty much dressed at that point. Just told them, hey, there's no exterior access. We're gonna go in here and look for the basement steps.
And you saw 19 go straight in, and you went in, found it.
Yeah, so they went straight from the way the door was oriented. Again, it was facing the Bravo side, technically, because there was a little like bump out in the back of this house. So like you had to go in, make an immediate right, and start making your way back toward the front of the house. So I'd seen them as I was starting to put my face piece on. I actually asked my lineman, I said, hey, who's that going through the back door? I just wanted, again, I didn't realize that they had redeployed. I hadn't picked it up on the radio or whatever. So they said, I think it's 19. Okay.
So instead of finding the basement door, you said, hey, we're going to go inside, find the steps, and make our way to the basement in that fashion.
Yeah, because I thought that I was pretty sure that there was something going on in there and that we needed that line in there to make sure that we controlled whatever was going on. Nope.
Visibility issues, finding the basement door.
No, the line was the appropriate line. We had plenty of line. We found it as soon as they opened that door, that slider, smoke came, good amount of smoke came out, but lifted pretty quick. So it wasn't an indication that there was something burning uncontrolled below us.
Okay.
Moderate visibility.
We're going to pause real quick. I believe we have a question.
All right, we have 2 questions. At this point, was the information that you received from the ECC adequate and correct? Did the information match what the calling party told us here? This is coming from a dispatcher.
I don't. We'll go to the first engine, and then we'll go to the chief.
It didn't make a difference to me. I mean, we were there, quickly enough that it.
Minute and 9 seconds, right? Did I see that right? Okay.
I don't even recall looking at the CAD notes. It doesn't.
Okay.
It probably changes things, but it's not going to. I mean,
honest answer.
We still have to put a line in service. We still have to do searches. We still have to do 360s. That's,
okay. And then I guess I know that the chief didn't have an MDC,
Can I
so I
jump
don't
in
even need
there?
to. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe just on the same vein as this. I'm obviously in the back, so I don't know what's on the MDC either. But if they think that there's something important that needs to be relayed, you need to say it. Not think that the guy riding up front is just reading it.
Yeah. Meaning a lot of things are going on.
Because
Maps.
the chief's MDC was updating. He didn't have it either. So if there was something important, you need to verbalize it.
Certainly.
I'll put my 2 cents into that question because I did reference my MDC, but to be honest with you, that was the only comment that the calling party believes that the house may be under renovation. That was it.
And question 2, Chief? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, question 2. I know that Chief Fitch ordered a search, but had anyone reported on the occupant status?
Chief?
So the occupant status did get reported on by ambulance 716, and when they gave that, they gave an excellent update as to what they had. The neighbor had said that the occupants had recently moved out, and that they believe that the house was under renovation. And I can tell you that
Chief, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who gave that report.
ambulance 716.
Okay.
They did an outstanding job of finding who the the neighbors were, getting some information, and then talk about critical information being passed along. That's what they passed along. That was good. But I can tell you that the absolute first thought that went through my head when they said that was, that doesn't mean that this house is not occupied and we don't have responsibility to a primary. And I know a lot of people say, well, it's under renovation. So again, going back to life history and experiences, when I moved into my last house, I lived in it, sleeping bag, taking care of doing work on the house for a couple of days. When I moved out of my last house, the painter got off of work and he went to bed on my floor for a couple hours. Then he painted all night long. Then he slept for a little bit. Then he went to work. And we run plenty of places where guys that, especially in this area, where people are hired to do work and they may just sleep in the house. So, I mean, I got.
So while the occupant status report, very valuable, doesn't negate the need for the search.
It doesn't, but it does mean that we're not taking extreme risk of, we're not getting in front of a hand line. We're working with the engine company, and as they go in, we're going to search in that vicinity. So primary still needs to be completed.
Okay. Chief.
All right, a few comments and a question. From a Fire Officer 2 student, I've heard of and been involved in an incident where doors are being used to cover holes. Question, if the fire has progressed to this point and considering the size of the hole, why are we putting people at risk of a fall into a hole for nothing? And then the last question, looking back, how do we justify this when we know the holes exist?
So I'm going to address that one. Certainly a valid question. I'm not saying that at all, and that's probably a better topic to be discussed internally in the class with the instructor or their current officer and battalion chief. I just kind of want to focus on the story that we have going on and the actions of the company officers at this event. So I'm not saying it's a bad question. I just don't know if we're going to have time to address that. Did you have another question?
Yeah. Did you?
No, go ahead,
Okay.
Chief
All right,
Thomas.
last question. Did command consider using a field observer per the IRP since the battalion command platform had poor views?
Were you able to do that, Chief?
So if I had a driver, it would have been great. But I don't have a driver. So the 2nd Battalion Chief, and if I had a driver, I wouldn't miss a lot of the communications that occur because I'm trying to go around vehicles or, stop at traffic lights and stuff like that. So the first person that I got to assist me was Battalion 4. He did a circle check, came back and gave me some information, and then he got in the vehicle. And I can tell you that it's difficult to where you put that 2nd chief. The expectation of the department right now is we put that 2nd chief in the car. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I think that he would have been much more beneficial up at the house, managing things and giving me some more, feedback as to the overall picture as to, except for, not looking at just individual units. Like I wasn't aware that a line was getting extended. I wasn't aware that the first line wasn't able to get, across the hole initially. So yeah, I would love to have had a person that I could have assigned to be interior, or a person I could have assigned to get around and give me some better set of eyes. But I rely a little bit too on the rig officer to give me some of that information if they're able to do so, if they have something that's pertinent. But yeah, no other officer was there.
But our reports in this event, at this point, our reports aren't all that inaccurate. Is that correct?
No, they're not. No, they're not. But having one person to be able to kind of see what each individual unit is doing and then bring things together makes a huge advantage to me to get better information, as well as to manage units, and that goes back to assigning the first engine to be the division supervisor. I struggle with that all the time because that guy's busy. That stretching that first line and getting in service, how much can they really see of the whole entire division? So yeah, having another person in there would be great.
Go ahead, Chief. Keep going.
Give me a driver and it won't be a problem.
Okay. All right, so let's get back, focus back on this event if we could. So we have the third engine going to the basement. Conditions in the basement, Lieutenant?
Yeah, so we went down the steps, myself and Lieutenant Harris went down the steps at pretty much the same time. Moderate visibility, I'd say, and moderate to low visibility, but not any real heat or anything like that. You want me to keep going about the basement, or, I mean?
Was there active fire in the basement?
Not initially. Lieutenant Harris opened up some of the ceiling, and that's when we found fire in the joist spaces between the basement and the first floor, so we did have to extinguish fire. The line was coming down right behind me. Kind of got out of the way. They knocked down the fire, the little bit of fire that was in that floor space between the basement and first floor, and at that point, I was under the assumption, okay, we had a fire that the whole time, again, under the assumption that this was a Cape Cod. We had fire that originated in that joist space, whether HVAC or whatever. I mean, I could see an air handler right next to me. Ran down that joist space, got up on the walls, got up on these knee walls, now in the attic. Yeah.
Space upstairs. Who gave the Charlie report?
Right.
And I apologize, Lieutenant. What was the Charlie report?
Single story on the rear, fire showing from Bravo side, and solar panels.
Okay.
They were identified many times on the radio.
The solar panels?
They were.
Okay. So back to the first engine. So you have crews coming in from the Charlie side. You're overcoming this obstacle. What's your next game plan, or what's your next actions?
So really, once we got over the hole, the bulk of the fire was in that Alpha Bravo corner, and we just couldn't get to it because the floor was gone. So when you went in the front door and then made a button hook left, that was the hallway leading to the back bedroom. Well, there was no floor there. There was nothing there. It was all gone. So we couldn't actually get to where
So multiple holes in the floor? Or
it was all the same hole. It just worked like the entire,
wall.
yeah. So, and that, because the wall was still intact when we had gone in there, I couldn't tell straight away that floor is also gone. I just knew what it was in front of me was gone, and then everything that had gone over to the Delta side.
Okay.
So once we got in there, 19 had already talked about that back bedroom was, or that hallway was compromised, the floor was gone, so we couldn't physically get into the area that we needed to get the ceilings down and get a line in place.
But 19 was working that direction?
Correct.
Okay. And truck 16, I would guess, was working with you or into the Charlie side or into the first floor? Was that kind of the general impression, Chief?
So yeah, the belief was that truck 16 was working as a crew, and that truck 16 was working on the number one floor to give me a primary, which I ended up getting a report from them that a primary was complete at I think it was the 16-minute mark.
Okay. All right. So is this kind of where the Mayday happened at that point? Because we have I do believe we have that audio, do we not? Okay, so are we kind of at that point in the event where...
Not quite. I mean, 12 gave a good report of what they had below, and that the fire was, that there had been fire, that there was drop down, but there was any fire in the basement was controlled, and that was passed on. And that was an excellent report that changed my mentality, because in the car, looking at the audio of the car, I'm already talking about pulling these guys out, and when he tells me that he had fire in the basement, he pauses the radio, and then he keys up the mic again, and he starts speaking. Well, in between there in the car, I turned to the 2nd Battalion Chief, and I said, we're pulling them out. And then his next response was, well, the fire's under control. There's no fire basically at this point in the basement, which changed my...
You're starting to hear some of those key words that are
Right.
putting your mindset towards, there might be some structural compromise here. I need to maybe start thinking about plan B, C, D.
Well, yeah, I was already thinking about that, but knowing that when I heard him tell me that there was not a fire that was affecting the joists that those guys were standing on, yeah, I know there was a hole in the floor, that I was comfortable at that point letting those guys work, knowing that the fire is above them.
And vented.
And vented. And, the solar panels are definitely a concern of mine, but I know that those are about 40 pounds per square foot for, impact on the roof. Those are not a big impact on the roof, as opposed to what a lot of people think that they are.
Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and this, I guess, progresses a little bit. We continue to work on the first floor. We continue to work in the basement. We believe the searches to be negative from reports, and then the Mayday. Is that right?
Yep. So the Mayday
Okay.
occurs about just roughly 2 minutes after the primary is complete, which.
So we're 18 or so minutes.
Yeah, I asked Montgomery, how long since dispatch? It was 16 minutes. That's, my mentality, my thought process was we need to be getting these guys out because things aren't changing. And that's where I really struggle is when I had a primary complete in the structure, I have a hole in the floor, I have a hole in the roof, and conditions aren't changing. That's when those guys had to have been pulled out, and they weren't at that point. So.
All right, so let's listen to that, please.
Page 716, give me an assessment of structural integrity on the first floor.
Okay, first off, on the first floor. You got two hours on the truck out, baby. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Firefighter 2, the first floor. That's the front door. We see him. I just need we got somebody in the basement that has him right now.
Let's stop
Okay, I
right there.
copy the Mayday. You say you do have engine 712 with the person in the basement?
All right, so we're operating. We know we have a hole in the floor. You have crews on floor number 1, primary search negative, guys in the basement, you hear a Mayday. Who called the Mayday?
Ended up being truck 716 driver called the Mayday, but we didn't know that at the time.
Okay. And I'm going to turn to you, Scott, to tell me, did you hear the Mayday?
Oh, I watched it happen.
Okay, so you watch it happen. So as a new officer, as a guy that's working on becoming a lieutenant, what happens to you and your actions? What do you do?
So I heard the Mayday go out. I saw what had occurred, and there was nothing. I wasn't going to be able to go into the hole to get him, so we just hold steady and keep doing what we're doing. There's a RIT team there for a reason. I can't, stop what we're doing to go help this guy. Plus, obviously, Lieutenant Machado had already said the fire's out in the basement, so it wasn't to the point where I was concerned that someone needs to go down in that.
Did you see people in the basement, or just
Yes.
the firemen?
I saw people in the basement because when he fell through, I had scanned the area with my thermal imager, and it was almost seemed instantly that he was gone. You know what I mean? Like someone had
There 1 minute, gone the next.
Correct. Like I had watched it happen,
Okay.
Scanned, and then it was, already taken care of at that point. So, the initial thought was not to change anything I was doing because there was already other people that were working on it.
Okay, so I'm going to move back I'm going to go to the 5th due engine. Lieutenant Riley, you heard the Mayday. Did you hear the Mayday?
Yeah, so we were actually operating on side Bravo of the house. So we were on side Bravo, and the Mayday occurred. So we immediately took our line because we heard, basically, this happened very quickly. Mayday occurred. Yeah, Mayday occurred, and we heard front door. So we immediately started back around to the front door. By the time we got the line basically up the 2 steps or 3 steps, they met with the officer of 16's engine, who was basically standing there saying, "Hey, it's good, just stand back," kind of deal, just hold up, don't enter yet. And we could hear the communications going on that they were bringing them out from the basement. Company 12 was going to bring the Mayday out.
Did you understand, as a group supervisor, did you understand the Mayday, who it was, the typical lunar things that we practice in safety and survival?
I did not know who it was. I heard 16 talking on the radio. So I assumed it was somebody from Company 16. I knew Company 16 was operating at the front door or from side A. So that's about all I knew. And at that point, I still hadn't met up with Rescue Squad 814 or Truck 834. However, when we ran up the steps, Squad 14 was actually running up with us at the exact same time. So they had either just arrived, just got there, and started up at the exact same time that this occurred. I'm not 100% sure, but that was the first time we saw them on the scene, is when the Mayday occurred.
Do you believe, knowing that lunar information, that additional information, would have changed any of your game plan?
It's probably not, because like I said, immediately they said somebody was with him in the basement.
Okay.
So
Were you trying to process through some of that lunar information if you needed?
yeah, somewhat, because so we were positioned on side Bravo because we knew two things were going on. Number one, I knew 16 was operating on side A and it went through side A. I knew 19 had went through side C. So the chief actually recommended moving that line to side Bravo. So
The rapid intervention line?
Yes.
Okay.
So we moved it. I announced on the radio that I was going to move it, and I also announced on the radio that I was going to start flowing water into the attic, and that's what we were doing when this mayday occurred.
Okay. Okay. So, Chief, I'm going to go to you. Tell me what you're thinking, what your actions are going to be when you hear this. And does it change your tone or the tone of the event?
So, backtrack for 1 second. I had mentioned to one engine that the line was going in on the Bravo side because when they said they were redirecting their line, they said they were going in the Bravo side. So the reason that I had pointed out to that, the first two engines there, where the line's going in the Bravo side, is I want them to be where the line's going in as opposed to standing on the Alpha side, not where the line is. So that's why they, I guess, kind of ended up there. But there was confusion with that Bravo side, Charlie side door. So what was your question again?
When the mayday occurs, what's that change, or does it change any of your plan? You had mentioned that you had thought about bringing people out. Fire conditions weren't changing. We had a report of nobody in the structure. Now we have a mayday. Now what does Chief Fitch do?
So, I needed to find out a little bit more information, but in that initial transmission, they talk about having a person with them already. So I just want to confirm that and confirm that we can get them out. There was confusion as to what unit. So, the red engine's thinking that it's 16's engine. Inside, we thought it was 19's engine. In the car, we both thought it was 19's engine because it sounded like that's who was given the mayday, which we were wrong on. And that's after it was mitigated. I called 19 to make sure, do you have your whole crew together? I never and we didn't know if that's where it would have been nice to know who called the mayday to be able to say, who do you see and is it mitigated so I can follow up with that unit specifically or that person specifically. But at that point in time, the whole operation becomes about getting, the firefighter
Certainly.
out of the fire. My plan is to not deploy a RIT team, especially in a single family home that size, until I know that I need them. And my expectation is not to send the engine company, because if I don't need water, then there's no reason to send an engine in there. And in theory, trucks and squads should be searching. Obviously, we don't staff them like that in this county, but that's who should be doing the searches and practicing on them. So those are the guys that should be going in to locate these people and get them out. So that would be my expectation. Unfortunately, we got 2 PG units that weren't initially aware of what their responsibility was. They came to the car and asked. They were assigned a RIT, and they hadn't had a chance to meet with the rig supervisor to come up with a plan. But I want to know if guys that are close to the mayday can affect a rescue.
So crews in the vicinity in your mind, are going to affect that rescue.
Yes, that's what I want to find out right away, because why am I going to send a crew in that isn't aware of where things are in that
Sure.
building when I have a crew that's right next to them? What I want to do is, if those guys can affect that rescue, then I'll backfill them with a RIC company, whatever company's
So
needed.
certainly, and that brings up a good point. So I'm going to go back to Lieutenant Riley. Working with out-of-county crews, how did that affect you?
So like I said, we didn't even meet up with them when this mayday occurred.
Did you know who the rapid intervention group consisted of?
So it was announced, yes. I knew that. And then I also heard engine 702 got filled in there also. And that officer came up to me and said, hey, I was dispatched on the RID as well, and I'm here with you. So, yes, we knew who they were, but, it all depends also on the time of day with 14, 1.
A lot of variables.
Coming from PG County, squad 14 can show up with 8 people. Truck 1 can show up with 8 people. So, and then during the daytime, it could be 3 to 4. So it does change. It changes a lot. And working with the same crews every day, working with the same people every day on the engine company, they know the expectations when they're rapid intervention.
And we're beginning to see trends or comments like that through this series.
So for us at Engine 701, I know that hand line is strictly there for protection. That our goal is to get to them, make sure that we're protecting them from any fire that may be going on. And like the chief said, our thought is the truck and the squad is to go in. Truck should be working, getting the person on air, and the squad should be working on getting the person out as needed. That's how our mindset is to operate anyway right now.
Thank you. So Mayday, firefighter through the floor. I am going to go over to Lieutenant Machala. Tell me what happened.
So we were between the basement and the first floor. Obviously, we were in the basement, put out a little bit of fire, gave that report. We were having some radio difficulties in the basement too. And I think it was reception more than radio usage as we go back and listen to it and everything. So I actually had to give my one return on Oscar just to get out and get a clear message across. So going back and forth, the basement was divided, which we didn't really touch on. Basically, the where I had originally looked in that casement window that they had broken out on the Bravo side was completely separate from the portion of the basement we were actually operating in once we went in the house.
So the basement of this house this house had a basement that was basically cut in half.
It was separated basically like 2/3 and 1/3, essentially, I would say, by a block wall, by a cinder block wall. So we were operating.
During the event, we don't know that though.
I mean, I knew that once I was inside. I didn't really communicate that. The portion that we were in was the portion that you could easily access. The rest of it was you were unable to access. There was maybe at some point they had some kind of entryway into there from a trapdoor or something on the first floor. We never found it. But it was an unimproved crawl space, basically, the rest of it.
But you heard the Mayday or you saw the firefighter?
I didn't see him, so I think I had actually communicated with him face-to-face right beforehand. I had been up on the first floor going face-to-face trying to find another basement entrance to get to the other part because I wasn't sure what it was at that point in time. I just knew there was more to the basement that I was trying to get to. So I had communicated with 19's officer while we were up there. I communicated with Rescue 2, who was in the living room area. They were pulling some ceiling there. I had directed my line to come back up because I want to find the other part of this basement. I thought there was going to be another door to go down from the first floor, and I knew there was a lot of fire in that attic, so I had the guys come up. They were in the process of bringing my line up from the basement to the first floor to assist with that fire while we tried to find another way to that other part of the basement when he fell through. So I heard it. Just in the ambient environment, I heard the crash and heard him fall through the floor. And as soon as I knew right what had happened, I heard a bunch of people yelling and stuff like that. I immediately just ran back down the stairs because I knew the next person that was going to be called was me because I was the basement division supervisor.
And you found him, obviously?
Yeah, so the radio transmission came. I was literally at the bottom of the stairs when the radio transmission started. I knew what had happened without physically seeing it. And to the point I said, well, I'd gotten basically to the bottom of the stairs when I heard the Mayday start on the radio, got to him. My primary concern was ascertaining who he was and if he was hurt. It seemed like he was kind of holding himself up, and I wanted to reassure him that, hey, I'm down here. There's nothing going on. You can come through, because I knew it was going to be obviously a lot easier just to have him come down, walk back up since it was tenable.
He was physically hanging from the floor?
Yeah, like holding him, holding himself like that.
You brought him down, took him up the steps and out?
Just ascertained who he was, again, because I knew that was going to be a piece of information that they wanted, that the incident commander wanted, and obviously his unit officer. Just showed him where the steps was, got it, hey, are you hurt? Where's your officer? I think I asked him that just again so we could try to communicate that, hey, he was here, he was safe for accountability purposes, and then ended up just having him go out the rear door since it was in close proximity to get him out of the house.
So all of this happened very fast. They cleared the Mayday very fast. You were good with the Mayday being cleared, kind of moving?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, were you ready to go back to your original game plan of let's kind of regroup here, if we will?
So at that point, when the Mayday occurred, the plan was as soon as that's mitigated, we're pulling them out. In the period of time from that occurring to the Mayday ending, there was no fire coming out of that top of that house. They had knocked down I don't know what line got in place there, but they had knocked down the bulk of the fire. The two of us in the car basically said, all right, well, let's let them finish up. It looks like they finally got a knock on this. That's when that lasted for, I don't know what the time frame was, maybe 45 seconds or so. And my gut had been telling me to pull them out by then, and that was a failure on my part, not pulling them out when my gut was telling me to pull them out. And really, after the primary was completed, there was no validation for leaving those guys in there. That's on me. Yeah, so about 45 seconds into it, my gut finally was like, look, get your head out of
So
your
then there
ass
was
and pull
a
them out.
second mayday, correct, Chief?
Yep. So the plan was to pull them out, and it was to evacuate. We were evacuating, and that's when the second transmission came across of a person that a firefighter had fallen through. There wasn't a mayday declared, but it was a mayday.
Okay. So same basic situation. A firefighter through the floor, and it was resolved essentially the same way?
So yeah, it was resolved. 12 obviously did a good job multiple times on that fire. The lunar was not conveyed, so I wasn't sure who exactly had fallen through, and I'm not necessarily involved. I don't really care who the person is. I care who the engine 719 right, or I need to know what unit so I can get that unit together, confirm that there's nobody else from that unit. That's the most critical information. I do care obviously who the person is, but what's more important is to find out what unit and what part of that unit is affected. Is it more than one person? So I didn't have that information. I wasn't sure where in the structure they had fallen, and I wanted to find that out. So that, again, transmission right away was they have eyes on them. I could see somebody with them.
So we aren't going to negate the rest of it, but I do want to move on. So after that second person fell through the floor, we withdrew everybody. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Kind of. How did we attack the fire at that point?
So as soon as we were withdrawing people, I wanted to get an accountability, and I also wanted to immediately get units to all four sides of the house and start putting water in there, because I've been on too many evacuations where we get outside and then it's 5 minutes before we're actually putting any more fire out. We end up flowing 1,000 to 1,500 gallons a minute for 10, 15 minutes, and the house is structurally unstable, and then we got to go back in. So my goal was to quickly put lines in place, knock down as much fire as we can as quickly as possible, so that we could figure out where the hot spots were and get this thing
And how did
put
we
out.
do? How did we accomplish that task?
So then I had another chief, Chief A14 Bravo, was on the scene. He reported to the command post, and we told him first to go manage the mayday and what was going on there, and then get everybody out of the structure. Once that was done, we wanted to put. I assigned him to take 2 crews to go inside and figure out where we still had fire.
Okay.
He managed those guys. We got the fire under control pretty quickly at that point.
Through hand lines or through a tower? Through what?
Well, so through hand lines, we got the tower in service for a short period, and knocked down some area.
Okay. So, Chief Thomas, yes, question.
All right, a couple questions related to the Mayday. How much time had elapsed from the rapid intervention dispatch to the Mayday? Seems like a long time, maybe 18 minutes plus into the incident, not to have a rig established. Were there delays with PG? That's question number 1, and you can answer that if you want now.
So the mayday occurred at roughly the 18-minute mark. So in the rapid intervention dispatch was when 16 requested it. But more than that, I'd have to.
So there was a group established, correct? The group was there. We just might not have communicated like we wanted to communicate, come up with a game plan like we ideally would come up, but we don't operate in an ideal situation.
Yeah, so we had never met with Squad 14 or Truck 834 at that point when the Mayday occurred. So I can't say that they were there. I can't say that they weren't there. I can just say that they were not with me at the rapid intervention.
Okay. Next question.
All right, what was the firefighter doing when he fell through the floor? Was he trying to advance a line over the hole?
Do we know that information? I don't.
I might.
So he was part of the rescue. He was part of the rescue squad. So we're assuming searching.
All right, there were 2 of them, right? 2 fell through the hole
From
at
different
times?
crews.
Right.
Go,
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I believe the first one was assisting with opening up or searching, and I just misstep, something like that. It seemed that both the firefighters were operating. They were basically to the rear of the house from where the hole was, so they weren't trying to go over the hole or hop the hole or anything like that. They had come essentially from the rear of the house, operating in the structurally sound portion of the building. And it was all fairly, structurally sound with the exception of the hole. But they were operating from that side. I think the one just maybe misstepped, and the second one was in the process of maneuvering a hand line. Again, same thing. I think said he knew where the hole was, misstep kind of thing, or maybe the corner of it, something like that. But they were both operating from that stable side.
Anything else, Chief Thomas? Okay, so real quick, building construction. So our belief is going into this that it's a ordinary construction, brick and block wall, wood components of it, right?
Correct.
And that held to be true. We believed in the beginning that there was occupied second floor. That was not true. Is that right?
There was nothing from our initial discussion and what I initially saw that gave me any indication that there was a second floor on that at all.
So the neighbor's house they just happened to build the space out.
Oh yeah, it was a wrong assumption that there was any second floor, and then I guess what continued to create that problem is we had a primary that got confirmed by the second floor, and there's people saying that they're working their way to the second floor. And again, there was nothing malicious. It was just
confusion.
Multiple things coming together that made some bad things happen with that.
And then the other part is the basement part, where one would assume a basement would encompass an entire footprint, and this did not, right?
Yep.
Okay. Was there access to the part of the basement that was not in the footprint of the house?
It was all in the footprint of the house, but there was only interior access only to the portion of the basement that was, if you're looking at the front of the house, was basically the third of the delta side. So, and that's this cinder block wall. No, this was a full basement with a cinder block wall that ran from Alpha to Charlie and just separated that side. It wasn't finished, but it was finished enough where they had air handler, a workbench, stuff like that down there. And then the 2/3 of the basement, which was from just to the right of the front door toward the Bravo wall, was unimproved crawl space, basically, just dug out, partially excavated, essentially, on that side of the house that there was no access to that we ever found, other than that casement window on the Alpha Bravo corner.
Okay. So this point, I'm going to kind of turn this a little bit to something I think that really interests me, and in the past, and I'm going to specifically address Firefighter Pierce. In the past, where we have had the COLA programs, we've had the mentorship programs in the county, and we're going to have a modified version of those programs. But tell me what you have done, what your company has done for you, how you have gotten yourself ready to ride the front seat, to be a lieutenant in our organization.
So obviously, basically from the beginning of this, since the day I took the test, we've been going over things as far as doing tabletop exercises, pulling up videos on YouTube, doing, are you first arriving engine, second arriving engine, third, where you fall in the arrival order, what your initial actions are. Once it got closer and we had gotten results back from the test, I started riding the front seat, and we did more go out, drive around, talk about first due water supply, stuff like that. We looked at, obviously, watching some of the previous boss talks and challenge in the streets and stuff that the county has put out, discussing what our tactics would have been, if this was ours in a specific area in our first due. And that, and the other thing is getting the input from not only the officers in my masters, but also, the senior fire threes, like basically everyone, because there's guys that might be junior in the department, or have only been doing this for a couple years, but the questions they ask are what give me the insight to be able to see it from their perspective, because those are the people I'm going to be managing. I don't have to manage the lieutenant. Like he's obviously very good at being an adult. I need to manage to learn how to do things where I manage the new guys that may not have the same experience as him. So the prep work for that, of discussing with even detailed guys that come in, making sure we talk about those things, even just between very unofficially, of going over, we drove back to this fire, and the guy that I was riding the ambulance with was asking questions that, had not been asked of me so far, and it helps to jog the memory. So, and kind of further what I get from this particular incident. So it's everything from, sitting at the lineup table discussing incidents, watching YouTube videos, discussing stuff that's happening throughout the country, of where different incidents are and, how different things are occurring. So it was overall a group effort from the entire shift,
Certainly.
right from the captain to
Certainly.
the junior guy on the shift.
Yeah. So how does doing that and being successful at those tabletops and those breakfast table discussions, going to this, where it's an event that's a minute and 9 seconds from dispatch to you arrive on the scene, which probably means it's a 25-second drive time or whatever it is, what changes, what could I do as a captain to get the next guy prepared, outside of, what's the difference in those two? This was an event. This was a fire. You had to lay out. You had to make decisions. You had to manage people. And that's, in this controlled environment is one thing, and in the street, it's something completely different. Did we set you up to be successful in that?
My people did. They, like I said, we would be driving down the street and say, hey, this is your house. You have a time constraint. Like, my engine driver is saying, I need to know now. We're coming up on the address. Like, and it's all, without setting houses on fire and doing live burns and stuff like that, you can't.
We're thinking about it.
Right. You
Go on.
You can't, reenact what's going on when you pull up a minute after dispatch, on a house fire. But by doing things like that where, they're putting you under pressure to, hey, you need to get this map book out, you need to find the hydrant, you need to figure out, where you need to tell your second due to go, or, hey, your third due, now, where are you going to come from that? So them putting those time constraints is what helped prepare me. And that's from, again, all aspects, from the lieutenant sitting in the back, giving me some information, to my driver, putting that pressure on me, saying...
And you're very fortunate that they're doing that.
Yes.
So and I'm just going to pick something. I'm going to say the map, okay? So you said that you tried to use the MDC to figure out how many houses up.
Correct.
That didn't work for you, or it wasn't fast enough, right? So have you changed anything that you do because that happened?
No.
So you're still using the MDC and the paper maps?
Correct. I will, basically my order of operations when I get in the front seat is make sure I know what the address is, tell my driver the cross streets and that he knows the address, and then I go to the map book. As I'm going to the map book, when I get a chance, I hit the map button on the CAD, because it is very good at showing you which, each individual house. What it's not good at is the little eye that shows up on there that tells you the location of the incident. That is generally not where the actual house is. So the information is half good from the CAD, but the actual, like, where it places the geographic, dot is not good. So the paper maps come first, because those rarely ever fail to load. And then if I can get supplemental information from the CAD map, I will use that.
Okay. But so that failure on this event, and I don't want to call it a failure, it's just inability to load in the time frame, that hasn't changed anything that you're doing?
No, because to me, it's more important, and this is, I guess, the way my brain works, is that it's more important for my driver to know the numbers and my driver to know the cross streets, because that's the easiest way to at least narrow down. Maybe if we don't know exactly what street we're going to, or he doesn't know, I don't know exactly where, each turn-by-turn direction, it gets him pointed in the right direction. Like, is it right out of the firehouse? Is it left out of the firehouse? Where are we going through four corners? Are we getting on the beltway? It gives him an idea, because he already knows that.
What would you have done if I was driving you that day?
That completely didn't know the area?
Yes.
The same thing. I would tell you the address and then the cross streets. And if you didn't know from there, then I would expect that you're not going to start driving without me knowing, correct? Okay. So then you go to the map page, or you go to and look it up in the directions, because our map book's laid out that when you look up 9600 block of Lorain Avenue, it tells you, left out of the firehouse, left onto Colesville, blah, 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 gets you in the direction. So you can make that first initial decision when you open that map book, if the maps are set up that way. Mm-hmm. You can try using the map to event on there. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. So
But it's certainly a huge stressor that you have to immediately overcome to get where you need to go.
yes, because you're not going anywhere if you can't say left, right, or straight out of a firehouse. You're already stranded in the water.
Going to this and not having the lieutenant in the back, having the guy that's still on his probationary time. He's done with his 2 weeks of non-staffing. Now you're working them through the next 24 weeks of being a probationary firefighter. What do you tell them?
So stretch the line of sight alpha. Do not go past that front door. Because when we'd opened the front door, we had saw the hole in the floor. Do not step set foot inside that house, because they may not understand, what we're getting into when we're presented with a hole in the floor. I still have to do stuff from the outside. I still need to do the circle check, which told me a lot of information. And then, I would come back and meet with them, and we would all work collectively to push forward.
So we are going to answer a couple of questions. I'm going to pick a couple of people. We're going to talk about what we might do different. Chief Thomas.
All right. How often do officers in the 1st Battalion rely on MDC versus paper versus active 911 maps? Let me get the second question in, and you can address them both. With knowing what you know now, would Chief Fitch or any other unit officer do anything differently?
Okay, so we are going to talk about question 2. I will talk about question 1. I do not use the MDC for anything other than the address of the call. I'm not going to lie. I may or may not look at the narrative. It's just not something I do. I didn't really know what to call this until actually Lieutenant Harris over there, when he was a firefighter on my shift, he called it triangulating, and it made a lot of sense to me. So I use my telephone, and I use a map book, and I use the MDC for an address. That's what works for me. I think everybody's probably a little bit different, and that's some of the growth that you have to do as an officer. You're going to fall down, and falling down is okay. It's just how you react to that and how you overcome that. So while Captain Arnold might be completely different, that's just how I am, and those are the tools that I use. Those tools kind of become very much more important when we're running out of county. I'm running Queens Chapel Road in Prince George's County. I don't even know if my MDC goes there, God's honest truth. It doesn't. I do, so I use my phone and the mapping system in my phone to accomplish that. And I don't want to take this away from you, Chief, but, and we're going to talk about this right now. I'm going to pick a couple of people. I want to start with Lieutenant Riley. If I could, if you were to have everything to do, if you were on the same call this afternoon or next shift, what would you do different?
So I guess better communication.
With who?
With the command, point blank communication. Straight to the point. One of the things I said was I was requesting to put my line in service on the Bravo side, but I didn't directly say it that way because fire was venting out the gable end, and his response was okay. After talking to him afterwards, he assumed that I was moving my line to side Bravo, like he requested, not to actually flow water. So be more specific.
The communication.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Lieutenant Machala, I'm going to go to you next.
Biggest thing I would say, just keeping an open mind and not getting so tied into your notions. Again, going down the road, reading comments in the MDC, hearing initial size up. Again, the whole time I was inside that house, like we talked about before, I thought I was in a Cape Cod. The pieces were coming together. I was going down the road, house under construction. I saw that supplement. I had time on my trip down 29. Once I knew exactly where I was going, finishing getting dressed and stuff, I'm reading these supplements. I'm like, I thought it was a salamander. I didn't think I was going to a fire. And initially I did. Then I gave a return, okay, now we're going to a fire. And not that I was any less ready, but just these different things. Under construction, he says a hole in the floor. Did they have the floors tore up? Are they just redoing the floor? Is it a hole burned through the floor? I saw the fire come out the front side of the roof. It looked like it was coming out of the dormer to me. It was still dark. I thought it was the second floor. Now I'm in the living room looking up. fire rolling through the whole attic. I'm like, why am I seeing fire right now? Where's the second floor? Where's the floor to the second floor? Like, things aren't adding up. Instead of just like, hey, reset in my head, I'm in a single story, single family with fire in the attic. The whole time I got fire in the knee walls. I'm thinking all these things that just weren't correct. So that's the biggest thing, is keeping an open mind, being able to adapt and like change my mindset, I guess, in terms of like what individual tactics I'm employing with my crew.
Lieutenant Owens, I'm going to go to you next. I know you were running the line, but you're also kind of mentoring the first due officer. Would you change anything or do anything different?
No, not with what Scott did. Scott comes with experience, so I wasn't worried about, we kind of piggyback and go back to what have we done with him as far as getting him ready. It's never one size fits all. So we didn't have to start from square one as far as, hey, we're looking through the map book. I mean, he came with that experience, so I wouldn't do anything different with that. There's some things that I would have done differently with the hand line, but no, not with Scott.
Okay. Chief Fitch, I want to go to you next.
All right, so thanks for putting these on, because they're outstanding for us to learn from. We need to look at how we do these calls and look at it more like professional sports, where the best in the business walk off the field and pick up a computer right away, and they're looking at what they did wrong, how they missed a read. We need to do the same thing. We went out the door that morning with some very good, aggressive guys who were going to a fire to do the best job that they can. Nothing malicious. We all went out that door to try to do the best thing, and there were some mistakes that were made. There's no question about it. My job as the incident commander is to assess the scene, and are things working and are things not working. And so, yes, I would do some things differently, because my gut was telling me I should have pulled them out. I didn't do that early enough. I should have done it earlier. I regret not doing that, obviously. I'm responsible for their health and safety, and the fact that any guys got injured or even had to call a mayday, I take full responsibility for. And so when the primary was complete and the conditions hadn't changed, it was time to pull those guys out. I would allow those guys to go back in that exact same fire, though, tomorrow. But again, once the primary is complete with those conditions, we need to pull people out. So
thank you,
I do wish there's some things were done differently.
Okay. Scott, you.
As far as where the hand line was put, I believe we made the right decision to stay there, because my concern was that if I left that position to go do something else, someone was going to come through that front door and they were going to go right down in that basement. I didn't want that to happen, so that's why we chose to use the door. That's why we made the choices we did. I would change. I failed to communicate. I did a lot of face-to-face communication with the units initially on scene, just because of there seems to be a trend of a lot of radio traffic, and it's not. I don't want to take up any more time than I need to. Obviously, I was on the short end of communicating appropriately, because there was things that I did not communicate to the battalion chief that were vital information. I've had discussions about, do I bring a hand tool or not, because I'm concerned with getting sucked in and operating using a hand tool, a bar, a hook, whatever anyone chooses. I will never not be without, shouldn't say never, but I will likely not be without a hand tool again.
Do you bring a tool? I do too.
So instead of me failing to be disciplined and operating how I'm not supposed to, I need to make sure that I am disciplined, and if I need to use my tool, use it. Other than that, I can stand there and just have it.
Yeah. You can always hand it to somebody else to use.
Correct. So other than that, the other major concern, again, I think we already hit on this, was that I was not in a good position to be Division I. I was assigned Division I. I was not in any position to communicate appropriately with Truck 16 and Engine 19. I should have said that over the radio. My other shortfall was, I thought, okay, the captain from 19's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He knows what's going on. I do not need to really communicate much with him. And it wasn't, we were just not on the same exact wavelength. We were trying to accomplish the same goal, but if I had communicated better with the captain, then we would have, been able to come together quicker, but that was a failure on my part, basically because I didn't believe that I needed to. So I think overall my biggest thing is not communicating enough with the people I needed to.
Does this fire make you nervous about being an officer or excite you about being an officer?
No, I mean, honestly, it's neither.
Okay.
It isn't. I mean, so, we said it before, like, I guess beforehand, like, there's nothing, the only thing I'm using this fire for is that there are things that I need to pull every piece of information and knowledge I can get from this so that none of this stuff happens again in the future, or I can help prevent it. That's, I was excited to be an officer when I decided to study for the test.
Good.
So,
And I hope you still are, honestly.
I am. I shouldn't say it that I'm not excited. I mean, I know there's, in terms of this incident, like, I know I need to pull all the information I can out of it to make sure that I do not let these things happen again.
Certainly. Thank you very much. So before we wrap up, if you sit back and you look a little bit about all of these events, we're starting to see the common themes through them, and what really is important for the success, both of the events, the citizens, the organization, all of that things, and the crews that you're operating with, same crews. That means a lot to the officers, to us officers. Our communication, right? So important. All of these boss talks that we did, the word communication has come up every time we've talked, and our ability to communicate effectively. And then I think this one, what was important to me, was the gut feeling thing, whether it came from Chief Fitch, hey, my gut feeling is this. That gut feeling means something. And sometimes we do need to go with that. Thank you. Chief Davis has got a couple parting words. While he's coming up here, I do want to comment or make mention of our next challenge in the street is on the 18th. Keeping afloat as a float officer. Basically a roundtable discussion with some current float officers and how they do what they do. Thank you. Chief?
All right, thanks. Thanks everybody for telling your story. I always liken this to, so back in my days riding the fire truck, I don't do that anymore, but think about coming in the next shift, right? And you talk about last incident, and like you learn stuff the next shift. There's like, well, I didn't know that, and I was there with you. Oh, I didn't see that. That's what you did? No, you did. Yep. I didn't know that, right? So that's a lot of what this was today. Now, granted, these folks have talked some, but I'll say we unpacked a lot of stuff today. We don't ever talk about these events, right? You see some written report 6 months later about what happened. Maybe you happened to be there. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you saw a video clip. You saw something on somebody's YouTube, social media, whatever. I think the true advantage of today is you heard from many of the folks that were there and what they did, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. So we've had some discussion off camera about just this stuff, like, hey, I didn't know that, those kind of things, that it probably warrants some follow-up. And we don't know what that follow-up will look like. Do we do another short clip about some stuff? There's going to be a written report. We know that, right? And that'll be forthcoming. We didn't want to wait for that to do this because we felt it was important. So I think that's how we're going to close this out. So it took a path that we weren't, well, we kind of knew that it was going to be difficult because it was a pretty complex event, and right, Maydays happened, and the good thing is nobody ended up being seriously injured, right, or worse. And the only thing I tell all the folks, as Captain Miller has talked about, especially the aspiring officers, right? This was not a big building. This was not the cold story warehouse in Rhode Island. This was not some big commercial building. It was a single store, a single family dwelling that was not occupied, and we had a couple close calls. So I think there's a lot to unpack from that. Some things we may go back and talk a little bit about policy stuff. Others we may not. We may look at some other things. But I think the important part is that we had the opportunity to hear everybody's story. So appreciate everybody, right? Some folks came in on the days off to do this. Some folks agreed to participate. So I thought it was really well done. Appreciate we had a lot of folks watching. And so I guess we'll get back to you on this. Just not sure exactly when and how, but there's going to be some kind of short follow-up just as we have a chance to regroup and say, you know what, those are some really important points, and we want to talk about them again. So until next time, when's the next 18th? So February 18th. This will be a good episode. It's going to talk about some float officer stuff. I think those are some interesting positions that we have in our organization, and they're going to talk about just different things that they go through as a float officer. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we encourage you to tune in there. So again, from everybody here, thank you for watching, and thanks our production crew, did a really good job, and we'll see you on February 18th.